Alright, to quickly summarize, around September of 2013, I was hiking around the Peat Swamp Reservoir in Ansonia, Connecticut, and I find on the banks of the reservoir what looks like a human bone, a tibia. So I call the cops, who show up, and an officer barely glances at it. He declares it's a deer bone. I walk up to the road, and I see two more. They look like detectives in an unmarked police car, both looking at me as I walk out of the trail that leads down to the reservoir and up Hatted Road to walk back to where my car was parked at the Naugatuck State Forest parking lot there. To be honest with you, at first, I hated finding something like that. It made me very nervous and paranoid. But when the cops said it was a deer bone, I felt relief. And then later on, I felt kind of stupid. And when I got home, I felt the impulse to just delete all the video that I had taken that day of the cop and the bone I found. The cop seemed so sure of himself. Oh, that's just a deer bone. And I should feel kind of stupid. I was thinking I should just delete all of this. However, I decided I'm going to go down there and I'm going to see if that bone is still there, first off. And if it is, I'm going to pick it up, bring it back home, and identify exactly what type of bone that is. Because that did look like a human tibia to me, because I did take anatomy and physiology in college. And that did not look like a deer bone. But if it was, I could get smarter at anatomy and physiology. So after taking it home and looking at it, it looked like what I thought it was. So I placed it in a bag and put it into a storage room. So people who are familiar with my videos will understand my experience with mind control, military operations concerning mind control. And what the military likes to do is manipulate people. That's the whole thing of mind control, is to stand behind the scenes and manipulate people without getting directly involved. And I would guess nothing would make them feel more superior than to place a human bone down by the reservoir where they knew I'd be walking along, for me to pick it up, look at it, and just leave it there and say he just walked right past human remains without doing anything. He's not too smart after all. And when I did call it in, watch how we can make him just not look into that. And look how he could be controlled like anybody else. So I fought the impulse. I'm not going to feel stupid. I'm not going to forget this happened. I'm going to go back, and even if the cops appear not to give a shit about even doing an investigation or even looking at the bone for more than 2 or 3 seconds, I'm going to go down there and do a more careful analysis of the situation. I'm not going to feel nervous about it. I'm not going to feel paranoid that I might get blamed. I'm not going to feel stupid because some piece of shit cop says, no, that's just a deer bone, you idiot. You know, get out of here. I'm not going to feel stupid. I'm going to look into this so I could be smarter. So at the end of all this, I could say I gave it my all. And that's all that matters. So because I did the right thing, I didn't ignore it. A lot of people, I would guess, if they were going through this program, they were surrounded by a bunch of weirdos, and all of a sudden they come across something like that, they might think, I don't want to get involved with that because I don't want to invite any more trouble into my life. I want to ignore that because that's ultimately what the program does to everybody. They make everyone so paranoid and so nervous they're taught just to mind your own business. So the best thing to do is ignore something like that. So I bet you they found a lot of people that are going through the program, they get so scared or so paranoid, they'll ignore something like that. I didn't see it. I'm going to ignore that. And so that's how the bad guys take over control over everybody else, is by basically getting everybody in the position where they're going to ignore everything. They're not going to get involved. They see someone getting hurt or some crime being committed, I better not get involved if I know what's good for me. That's what the CIA military want, because they're up to no good. And they want all the rest of you neutralized and scared and paranoid. So I documented all of this on a video. It goes on to be like 10 parts, and it's called the Naugatuck State Forest Incident. I began to notice these balloons that were at the top of this ridge. And if you want to look at that information, look at the Naugatuck State Forest Incident videos that I have on the Eden vs. John channel. So basically, I was taking video of that and then downloading the video onto my computer. Now in the middle of September, I go up to visit my family in New Hampshire to celebrate one of my daughter's birthdays. So I get back into Waterbury around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and this was September 16th of 2014. Now after a longer drive, it's like 2.5 hour drive, I wanted to stretch my legs. I had cramps in my legs. So I drove to the Hamilton Park, where they have a little bit of hiking trails. And anybody who knows the Hamilton Park area, there's the park that has a little playground and a couple of baseball fields. Then there's some hiking trails network behind the park. And then if you go down to this place, there's a location by the river with what seem to be metal storage bins. So I guess like the city kind of controls that area now. Some homeless people seem to live in that area, but the hiking trails interlock with that area. So I walked down to that area. It's like from Hamilton Park, from the road there to that area is like a 10-minute hike. So I hiked down across the bridge over to this area where they had those storage tanks, and then I turned around and started walking back over the bridge down this path, going back to my car, and I noticed another bone placed right on the road there. So I kind of knelt and took a look at this, and I noticed that it hadn't been there for too long because it was placed right on the surface of that path. It was not deep inside the soil. I didn't have to dig it out. It was right there on the surface. So the first thing I'm thinking of it might be some sort of chicken bone or something. Once again, I'm not very good at anatomy and physiology. So I'm thinking if there's a bone there, it looks like the size of what would be a chicken bone. And I'm thinking, what other animals could it be? Maybe a raccoon or a skunk? But it looked a little complex to be an animal bone or a chicken bone. So I had a bottle of water with me. So I took 2 sticks and I picked up the bone and I placed this bone into the bottle of water. So I screwed the top on, put it in my pocket, and I said, I'm going to go identify this. So the first thing I did was I went to the grocery store and I got some chicken. I got some drumsticks. So I went home and I boiled the chicken, and then I pulled the meat off the bone and pulled the tendon off. And I looked, comparing the two, and as you could see, they're very different. This bone that I found over there by Hamilton Park looks very complex compared to a chicken bone. So then I went on my computer on the internet and I looked up skunk bones and raccoon bones, and I was trying to take a look. And once again, this tiny bone doesn't look like that either. So I started looking at human skeletons, child skeletons. And what this looks like is a humerus bone for a child. Now the humerus bone consists of your shoulder down to your elbow, where your forearm connects to. But as I looked at the bone closer, I noticed that there was a break in this bone. and the break was healed incorrectly. So it looked like somebody had broken this child's arm, and the child didn't get proper medical treatment, and the bone had to heal on its own, and the bone healed incorrectly. There's a gap in the bone right here, and the bone looks twisted in a way. So when I opened up the water bottle, the smell of soil wafted out of the water bottle. It smelled like this bone had been buried in the ground, in the dirt. So I'm reporting this incident. I'm taking photographs of this bone and reporting my findings on the internet. I look at the Waterbury Police Department's website here, and I see, for instance, in the missing persons section, and I know they're busy. I know that they're constantly having to deal with new work and new crimes and new problems, but the most of the investigation is kind of basic. For example, in a missing persons report, they'll have some basic information, their address, a few pictures of them, where they were last seen, any identifying marks, and that's basically it. So it's kind of a basic report there on the internet. And they kind of put it out there on the website to say, if anyone has any information, let the cops know. Help the police. So that's what I did when I found this. I identified it, took pictures of it. I'm doing this report, and I'm putting it out in the public domain, saying if anyone has any information, contact me or the police. I just have kind of lost my faith in the police department. I have reason to believe that this is a game that the military/police are playing with me. It's sort of a cat and mouse game. They did this in the Ansonia area. My opinion is they left that bone out there for me to find, to see what I'll do with it. And they were hoping that I would ignore it. It's funny, through all this research that I've done into mind control, the military and the Central Intelligence Agency never is concerned about controlling people to do the right thing. It's always they want to create some sort of assassin or control people to do absolute evil things. So the last thing I needed to do was find something like that, call the cops, have the cops come out there and say, oh, that's a chicken bone or something. Or that's looks like an animal bone, looks like a raccoon arm. At least now I know that I've done the police work, I've identified it correctly, and I'm putting the information on the internet. Probably lots of the good cops are kept overworked. Well, some of these cops on the take, they're paid to look the other way, aren't they? And it's in their best interest if you look the other way too. And that's when the CIA gets involved, to make sure you collectively as the American people look the other way. So when I go onto the Waterbury Police Department website, this is the picture that looks you dead in the face here. Posse Comitatus in action here. Look at that. A bunch of cops dressed up in camouflage holding what? What's that, an M16? I don't know about you people, but from my knowledge of history, that's not a friendly sight. If you call the cops and a bunch of military guys show up in camouflage holding M16s, what would you think? So that's on the Waterbury Police Department's front page on their website. This is team, we get paid to look the other way.